Well, this is the last session of the day, and it's going to be about, it's called Stop Press, Media and Government Overreach in the Digital Age. And we're going to be talking about some of the pressing issues that, you know, a lot of you, or a lot of governments, and a lot of people in social media in this continent have been discussing and have been talking about in recent days, months, and years. And I'm just going to call up the panelists who are, I think, all here. Tolu Adeleru, a broadcast journalist with over 10 years experience in broadcast journalism. A round of applause, please. There's, of course, Tolu Ogunlesi, the Nigerian journalist and poet, and of course, the special assistant in digital and new media to President of Nigeria, Muhammadu Buhari. Henry Maina from Kenya, Article 19, who's literally just arrived. And last but not least, we have Dabo Olunyomi, who's the publisher of the New York Times. Thank you.
So, as I said in the beginning, my name is Abdi Latif. I am a correspondent with Quartz Africa. I report, I'm based in Nairobi. And this is going to be a very interesting session. I know a lot of you have questions and queries, and we're going to have enough time to actually have an interactive session after this. But I wanted to start this by giving the floor to our panelists and probably give each and every one of you a minute or two to tell us about the current thing that you're working on. And then also, probably, I know we're majority Kenyan and Nigerian, so let's probably take a minute or two discussing how the relationship between the government and the press, mostly in Kenya and Nigeria, and if you want to give other examples in other countries, that is also allowed, and especially in the context of digital media and some of the sensitive issues that it's raised over the last few years. Tolu?
Good afternoon, everybody. So my name is Tolu Adeleru. I work with Nigeria's leading talk news and sports radio station. I've been doing that for a few years now. And I tend to find myself in the sort of the middle point between the government and the CSOs as well as the NGOs in this conversation about digital rights. I report what government does. I have the CSOs and the NGOs on shows talking about digital rights, helping them to push the initiatives and push things like the Digital Rights Bill. So I'm also almost like the person who accumulates all of the conversation happening on both sides of the divide. And interestingly enough, in the past few years, the conversation has definitely increased. But for me on this side, it's difficult when you want to talk about digital rights when the majority of Nigerians are still struggling to provide the bare necessities for themselves or even to eat breakfast in the morning. So I have a very interactive talk show, a political show that deals with many of these issues. And if you bring issues like digital rights up, many of them will tell you they haven't dealt with the issues of NEPA, or they haven't dealt with the issues, rather electricity. They haven't dealt with the issues of their bad roads. They haven't dealt with the issues of school fees or medical situations, and you want them to now start fighting for digital rights when their basic human rights have not yet been met. So for me, I can have the engagements with the CSOs, I can have the engagements with the NGOs, I can have the government officials on my show talk about why they think that there should be more information available to the government. But I also find that the people who are going to be most directly affected, it's not that they don't care, it's not a priority. And that's a very big danger in this conversation, because government is moving ahead of this conversation while the citizens are still trying to provide their basic needs, and they're going to end up playing catch-up if they are not in fact as interested or as involved in the process as maybe the media is, or any of the CSOs or the NGOs that work in that space. So for me, I see it on all of the sides because of where I stand in the middle of the conversation, and it is a necessary conversation. Yesterday I was at the US Consulate for another event, and they were introducing an app for Nigerians called Know Your Rights Nigeria. And the conversation was still on the basic human rights many Nigerians are still trying to get. Freedom of protest, freedom of assembly, freedom of association. But we're not asking them to understand that in the 21st century, they need to start thinking about their privacy online, their data online, their rights online. But as someone once told me, human rights in Nigeria begins at breakfast, and if a Nigerian has not eaten, you can't ask him to demand some of those basic and now 21st century rights.
Okay, Henry Maina is my name. I work with Article 19 in Eastern Africa. I want to perhaps begin the discussion by making a rebuff of what our experienced journalist has indicated. A poor woman in Nigeria who wants to sell cassava so that she can take her children to school is better off with internet than telling her to go and sell cassava first because that is her priority, and then she will get interested in the internet later. It is that compartmentalization that has continued to deny the view of the poor people internet, making some people believe that as we are doing roads, as we are doing agricultural subsidies, internet is a luxury. Don't put anything in it now because Nigerians need to survive. We need to be aware that the internet is an instrument that can enable us address all those developmental issues. It is a need for now, as opposed to being a need for future once that the other development has been done. But to Abby's question on what is the relationship between the media and the government, I think speaking from perhaps a bad eye, there isn't a government in Africa that has cordial relationship with the media. There isn't a single one. And where there is a cordial relationship, it is either with co-opted media or state media. Co-opted media may mean they are private media entities that are lapdogs. They are praise singers for those in power, and therefore they've never criticized the government for anything they've done wrong. But where the relationship is not as good is the media that tries to hold those in power to account. And therefore, we have numerous cases in the region where you see states that are passing laws that criminalize media freedom as an outright way of beginning to deal with what they are calling rogue media. This is the media that wants to ask how many trips, foreign trips you've made, who was in your company, and why were they in your company, and how much did it cost us, and what did you get us in return. There are people who question subsidies. You know, all these countries have subsidies of one kind or another, agricultural, oil, social protection subsidies, but people remain poor and they don't access. Any media that highlights that is always going to be put to a lot of pressure. We've had processes of media houses closing unnecessarily. This is in Uganda, you look at Kenya. There are few countries where you would not have such closures, like in Namibia. But the challenge there is that the state uses advertising differently. So it doesn't close down the media, but it stops advertising in certain media agencies that do not cover them favorably. So they have to turn around and cover the government favorably for their own survival. So that is the tenuous relationship we are in. And increasingly, I think most countries now except Zimbabwe, Ghana, Kenya, and Lesotho have criminal defamation in their statute books. And most journalists are going through these criminal defamation charges. In and of themselves may look, they are not problematic. You're going to be subjected through courts of law. But the very idea that you can be arrested because you defend a big person. When an ordinary Nigerian defends another, the state is not available to arrest the defaming party. And that is how states are now using statutory tools to undermine media freedom. But we can come back to many of the other issues: sedition, counterterrorism laws, now cybersecurity laws, that are increasingly becoming tools of choice for the government to undermine media and digital actors' rights as it were. Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Guru Munis. I think that there's this conversation about government and media in the digital age would not make a lot of sense without going back to government and media in the age before digital. I think that context is going to be important because a lot of whatever conclusions we come to today or whatever opinions that we hold will be, I think, shaped by that context. I'm sitting next to somebody who was a journalist in the darkest days of Nigerian dictatorships. Today's journalists have it a lot easy, compared to what I think people like Salon and co dealt with. And so we all know how Nigeria's journey came from decades of dictatorships, where government was not just was a monopoly in terms of media. So in other words, the few papers or TV stations that were not owned by government had to be licensed by government. The ones that were not endorsed were shut down. The shutdowns were sometimes the easiest things that they faced. People were hounded, people went to jail, and all that. So, I think embedded in our collective unconscious as a people is that context of where we're coming from. And so when we have conversations today about government and media, it's important to keep that in mind. That it's often, I work with government, but I know as well that it's often quite difficult to get government to draw the line in terms of, once you give government powers over the media. And, I can speak because I've been on both sides. I've been a journalist, now I work in government. And that's not unusual. A lot of people go back and forth between the two. But I think there's a legitimate basis for people feeling uncomfortable when you put the word government, regulation, and media in one sentence, just because of the possibilities of abuse, and also when the abuse happens, who can be the independent arbiter. So once the government has the knife and government has the yam, and who is the voice that is going to say, no, you are causing too much of the yam, or not? So for me, so my views are, I think that's kind of what has shaped my views. And also because I understand that one of the things I've learned, of course, is that, it's easy to speak as a government official, assuming that you would always be a government official. But most people, typically, don't stay government officials for life. And so it's not unusual to find that people sometimes make and defend laws that they then end up being victims of when they're out of government. So when you kind of put all this together, then it becomes clear that we probably should be looking for another means of regulating the media. Something that does not allow the kind of abuses that have become a part of the part of life on the continent. And what I'm saying about Nigeria is just not only Nigeria. I mean, in many parts of the continent, it's actually even worse. So I'm not sure I have any answers yet, but I think that left to me, of course, first things first, there's a lot of self-regulation that I think should happen with the media. That's one. There should be some kind of mechanism for naming and shaming, where editors can kind of gather and discuss and all that. But also, even in terms of being able to institute sanctions and all that, I think we still have to figure out a way to work out a mechanism that doesn't put the knife and the yam in one person's hands. I'm not sure what the way to do that would be, but that needs to be done. But having said all of that, I think it's also important to make the point that the media, especially, I can speak for Nigeria, there's a lot of irresponsibilities in the media that I think needs to be tackled. But of course, that my point is that I don't think it's the government that should do that. But we also need to talk about what happens when people feel that they have been abused by the media. And it happens. It's not even a government conversation alone. You don't have to be a government official to feel that you have been, especially with the digital age now, with blogs and all that, with fake news and disinformation, anybody can basically say anything about anybody else. And so there has to be a way to sanction media houses without having to pull the plug on the internet or shutting down the media houses or anything. But there have to be ways. And I guess the legal system is one way, but there has to be a price that the media pays for disinformation, for fake news and all that. So I think that's my view. Government should not hold the knife and the yam, but the media also should not see that as an excuse or an opportunity to act without responsibility. Thank you.
Thanks. Jacob, part of the question I wanted to ask you was that, could you also look into this question historically and what has changed, especially in the digital age?
Thank you very much and good afternoon. I think to started well. The truth, though, for the media in Nigeria is that it came with a lot of promise, being one of the institutions that helped win Nigeria's independence. That's conferred some kind of respectability on it, but also a lot of responsibility in that regard. But beyond that, when I say media now, I think we have to make differentiation. I'm really talking at this point of print media. As those who are familiar with Nigerian media history will know, print press started as a private press. So it was interestingly very activist at origin, which was why some of the earliest nationalist leaders in this country were, of course, journalists before then they morphed to become politicians. But then, broadcast was not in that mode. So we have this divide in the country where you have the print press, which started in the 19th century, 1859 precisely, very, very tough, very activist, because it was punching the line against the colonial folks, but effectively radio started as public, or what you might call government, not really public. So it's, to use a very interesting point about being co-opted, so it's always been in that mode, being co-opted in the whole language of development. But anyway, the relationship between the two divides, government and media, had always been cat and mouse, and I think the worst time for us, I think, on effectively, we had waves of military regime. For me, though, if you look at all the difficulties that media had gone through in this country, and balance that against what is also brought to the table, the period between 1984, there's a 30-year, I mean, it's very crazy. What started in 1984, really? 84, 85, 86, when we had the first assassination by letter bomb. These were all military regimes, and it was extremely violent. I don't think anywhere in Africa, with the possible exception of apartheid South Africa, we've had the kind of horrendous reign of government attack on the media that we have had. This is so well documented now. I mean, the Ethiopian press also had this kind of difficulty. But things have eased seriously, which we have to be honest about. One of the biggest victories that was, of course, the Freedom of Information Act, which helps in one way or the other, for journalists and citizens to be able to demand an expanded access to information. And successively too, from 79 through 99, our Constitution, Section 22 of the most recent Constitution, has also given a bigger responsibility to the media to hold government accountable. So when, Tolu made a point in a zigzag way, is how to then demand and how to exact and give consequence to this accountability. My sense is that journalists, particularly in a digital environment where knowledge and tools for knowledge have become so available, perhaps we're not doing enough in this regard, and that is certainly where a whole lot of work has to be done. Government continues to be interested in regulation. Media in Nigeria always resisted this. We have what is called the Press Council. Media practice has made this inoperative because nobody is going to accept it anyway. The broadcast and the filmic medium been regulated in one way or the other, but the print has always been able. So governments always have to revert to some kind of legislative, judicial relationship with the media, between, I believe, 2016 and date, just to show the progression of how perhaps things have not fundamentally changed. We've had 37 attacks on the media in this country, which is the whole stratum of harassment, detention, and including murder. Very few things have also come, so legislatively, cybercrime, which is a new wave globally, has come. 2015, we have the Cyber Crime Act, which has actually not prosecuted and jailed anybody for cybercrime, but have continued to hold journalists, bloggers, and so on. So the true goals of this legislation is obvious. So I would say that the institutions of the media, both at the level of association, like the unions, the guilds, the editors, they have truly not organized in the right moment, right frame of mind to give the necessary pushback. So the way we have to see it by way of a conclusion is that if we place this whole relationship within a human rights framework, I would say that pretty much things have changed, but not very much.
Thanks. I want to change the topic of discussion to social media, because part of the reason why we're talking about digital media is because everybody who's on Twitter and Facebook now is almost a journalist, right? And I want the two colleagues to actually start. Maybe we can start with you. social media was very important for Nigeria's election in 2015, right? And then immediately after that, we're seeing a social media bill which was killed, and then now we're talking about the hate speech bill. Could you talk a little bit about the vested relationship between the government and social media use, and why is it that all of a sudden the government is very interested in, at controlling or addressing or legislating the use of social media?
This was about 2002, possibly, called a major press conference to speak about certain allegations about the political office holder. And once the political office holder got to hear that this was going to happen, just called the editors, and only one newspaper, of all the people who attended, only one newspaper reported the press conference. And that's how easy it was to do that, at the point. Today it's impossible. In fact, if it happened today, that activist will just have Tuesday and all that. But it's not new at all. So government sort of having an interest in media, it's not new. In fact, once upon a time, the biggest media organizations in Nigeria were owned by government. Daily Times, New Nigerian, TV stations. For the longest time, I grew up watching the NTA and OGTV, government owned. So there's nothing new about government wanting to have a finger on what media is doing. Again, because I guess more than anybody else, I guess governments know the power of media, both to get into office and to get out. Media plays a big part in, as you said, in elections and all that. And so the first elections that I would call social media elections in Nigeria were 2011. That was the first, big elections. And that's because those were the first elections we were having after the Obama elections, which I followed on Facebook, and I know a lot of people. For many people, our first major event on Facebook was the 2008 US elections, the Obama elections. And so we were looking forward to our own opportunity. And 2011 was that opportunity. And then we happened to have a candidate who became the first Nigerian president to join Facebook. And within 6 months, he was the second most followed head of state after Obama. So that was 2011 was. 2015 was a consolidation of sorts. And then maybe 2015, I don't know, this is just anecdotal, but maybe the emphasis shifted from Facebook to Twitter. Just like 2019 will probably be our first WhatsApp election, where that's the major. But when you now talk about the social media bill and all that, again, as I always say, government is not a monolith. Government is not one single thing. So whilst one or two legislators may have decided to come up with a bill, a social media bill, I don't think it necessarily means that the entire government was in support of that bill. And you can also see the way it was quickly shut down. So at any point in time, I think that there's usually like a spectrum, even within government. There will be the hardliners of the hawks, for whom it is social media. If you can pull the plug, just pull the plug. I've had government officials tell me, look, we need to do what Ethiopia is doing, or China. What they're doing in China, we need to do that. You always find those views. It doesn't mean that it's everybody. You always find that spectrum of opinion. There are people who don't care. There are people who care a lot. The hardliners and all that. And sometimes the hardliners are the ones who have the say and who make decisions and who decide. But I think ultimately it's good from the outside to understand that, and I've said this before on a panel like this, that it's just important to understand that in any government you will have people who are hardliners and who are not. And so if you are on the outside and looking for a way to, as an activist, it helps to identify the non-hardliners and all that, and be able to work with them, instead of just assuming that, the whole government is against social media. You will find people within governments who, just as I hear, I wasn't, I was a kid then, but I hear that even in the days when Yomi and Co were active journalists being hounded by government, that there often will be people within the security service who were sympathizers, who would often sometimes meet people and say, look, you have to leave your house now. So that for me is that's the way to view it. That look, where exactly, if you can map who are the hardliners and all that, who are the non-hardliners, and how can we work with the system to make sure that digital freedom continues to be the order of the day.
I think it's an understatement to say that government only wants to have a finger in the game. We can see it across the continent. Government doesn't want a finger in the media game. Government literally wants to regulate and almost to a point control what the media is doing. Yes, we were successful in finding a way to shut down the social media bill, but that came with sustained and consistent advocacy on the part of many NGOs and media. And there was actually a lot of international attention on that. So no, it wasn't fast. It was consistent. It was sustained. And because Nigerians had gotten a taste of how it was to be able to come online and either directly engage with a senator or a House of Rep member or any politician, they had gotten a taste of that, and that was something that the government was not going to find easy to take away from them. So I think, again, part of this digital conversation about digital rights, when people can understand truly how much freedom it gives them, how much ability to hold governments accountable it gives them, how much transparency they can also demand, when they get that taste, they won't want to give it up as easily as before. So it's an understatement to say that government only wants a finger in the game. Secondary to that, the Nigerian situation is interesting. I don't want to say it's special, because as Nigerians sometimes want to think that what's wrong with our country is special. And it's really just not necessarily special. We just choose different means of finding an answer to that. And the job I've been doing now, it has been quite interesting. In the beginning, we were being monitored by federal government, and we had the regulator constantly on our case. I still occasionally get a love letter from the regulator as it is now. But part of this conversation also has to take into cognizance something that my colleague here said about co-opting, which is, it's not even just as simple as being co-opted into sort of playing the government's game, but licenses can easily be revoked. Fines of 500,000, 1 million and upwards can be instituted in the blink of a hat. A company can be told to remove an OAP or a broadcaster from air, and if they don't, government can come down on them. So we have to have a conversation around not necessarily just co-opting, but the power of those who are meant to regulate the space without even having independent individuals involved or even media organizations involved in that regulation. So the Say No to Media bill is gone. We have an NGO bill that's still there. Are we going to have a conversation about that? That may not necessarily be targeting the media directly, but who does the media do its work with when it is holding government accountable? Who does the media work with when it is holding government, when it's asking them for more transparency? I work with organizations like PIN, I work with EIE, I do work with budgets, and I know that my content is richer for the content that they provide. I have more ability to educate Nigerians on what's happening in a small village somewhere that has had a 25 million naira write-off to provide a solar power borehole. But 3 years later, there's no borehole. I wouldn't be able to have that content, and I wouldn't be able to have that conversation if the NGOs and the CSO organizations that were involved didn't have the ability to do that. So we also have to look at the partners in the space as well, who help the media to be able to have these conversations, especially on my side of the divide where I'm sitting. So regulation is a massive, massive issue, and I think the relationship is changing. But one thing I always make a point of is Nigerians have to do more for the media themselves. The media is not necessarily in danger, we're not going extinct, we have a long fight ahead of us, but media needs to know that if push comes to shove, Nigerians will hit the streets to protect the media. How many Nigerians are going to hit the streets to protect the media? A lot of Nigerians will talk about the fact that the media is maybe not doing enough, or sometimes in bed with government or co-opted into the government side of things. But how many Nigerians will hit the streets if something goes wrong or if something happens? I remember when my guy over there had 1 or 2 issues last year. And even when you hear how Nigerians were reacting to some of the issues media organizations and individuals face, you wonder who exactly are you fighting for? So I think the questions also continue to revolve around how those who the media works with in engaging governments and the issues of transparency and accountability can do their job, and how as well educating Nigerians are and active in making sure that they demand that the media is still able to be part of the conversation, especially moving towards digital rights and keeping everybody safe online. And then the point about bloggers. This is the 21st century, we have to expand. It's no longer, the traditional media is no longer newspaper and broadcast. It's no longer newspaper and television. When we now talk about media, if a blogger's rights are threatened, my rights are threatened. And I think that's a conversation that media people within themselves also need to have. Because typically we like to say bloggers are not journalists and sort of push them into the corner somewhere. But if the rights of a blogger is threatened, my rights as a media person is also threatened. If they can come for them and nothing happens, eventually one day they'll come for me.
These laws are damaging. I mean, there are a lot of people out there who would say they'll use VPNs and they'll get over it, and there's a democratization of communication tools. How damaging do you think these regulations are now and also in the future?
2 things that are clear on the continent is that we don't have policy coherence. When you listen to most African leaders, we say we want to transform the continent to be an information society. But when we begin enacting policies, we enact policies that are going to ensure that we do not become an information society. So the big challenge in town is what I call policy incoherence. People not thinking through entire policy chain, but creating policies that suit certain moments of their time. If a politician has felt offended online, they run to parliament and they look for other politicians who may want to think like them, and they pass a law with the view that they want to punish one person who offended them. They don't remember that they have an entire country to think through, and life is not about themselves. So that is one challenge. But if you're looking at these laws, I was arguing that countries like Tanzania have had a budget deficit over the years. And this is the first time they are trying to raise their budget locally without foreign support. So if you want to be fair to them, they're entitled to raise money however they think. So do not blame them for trying to raise revenue. That is okay. But you need to think about it, that if this is a country where people can't afford a meal a day, are they going to afford to register a blog? Then effectively you help them by saying that while this is a tool you are suggesting to help you raise revenue, it's likely not to return anything. If you look at it economically, it's not likely to return anything. And therefore that economic choice is not worth pursuing. But then once you discover that, then you notice that it wasn't because of revenue that they chose to pursue that line. That they chose to pursue that line as a way of limiting civic space because they've physically managed to control the physical space. The ruling party in Tanzania, CCM, knows that it has muzzled the opposition to the extent possible. The only remaining space is virtual. What do you do where people are beginning to organize online and you don't have control over them because some of the organizers are overseas and they only have influencers, people who disseminate their arguments in your country. So it is those middle-level people that this law is pursuing, because it can't pursue those who are abroad because of the restriction challenges. So what we need to learn is how do we use that very surveillance tool that the state is putting forward to surveil the state itself, as opposed to us crying that surveillance is wrong, because surveillance is going to be there in some way. So as a human rights actor, I'm borrowing from two different schools of thought. One school of thought, he talked about 1984. I would like most of us to think about George Orwell's book, 1984, and what it meant, Big Brother in town, being able to surveil on all of us. But there is a reverse, that when the state is surveilling all of you, you can also surveil the state. Because it has already ripped itself open to allow surveillance to exist. So let's think about, if we can appropriate surveillance tools, we can be able to hold our leaders to account. And therefore there will be something positive out of surveillance. It's not just them curtailing our rights, that we can also begin to hold them to account with more facts that are irrefutable. So if we think through that process well, then we begin to accept that surveillance is here. And it's going to be there as we embrace more technology. Surveillance is going to exist. We can mitigate against it, but we will not eliminate it. Either by the state or sometimes by the media as individuals. So most of us will remember News of the World and wiretapping. While most countries have criminalized wiretapping, most countries globally don't have a law on video tapping. So increasingly, we are getting people recorded on video, and there isn't a court of law you can run to. You will feel bad. And this could be the media doing a story about you, or it could be a state that wants to hold you to account. So, thinking through this, yes, there is a place for regulation, and we need to ask ourselves, is social media going to be without regulation? I'm one of the people who argue that social media is already regulated. To the extent that you are going to defame anyone, all countries on the continent have defamation laws. So you don't need a new law on defamation because you've been defamed online. All countries have laws against incitement to violence, to genocide, to hatred, to discrimination. You don't need a new law because the incitement has happened online. All countries have now laws on cyber security. Some have laws on counterterrorism. And when you think through all these, those people who say social media is not regulated, and therefore we need a new law on social media, just do not understand that all these laws offline apply. So anytime you are calling for extra regulation, just know that in the statute books you are calling for perhaps 30+ laws that will be dealing with online engagement. That in itself is problematic because you're giving those in power tools of choice. For instance, where defamation existed offline and it had lesser sentences, when they are passing social media laws, they are going to make the sanctions on defamation harsher. And therefore, the Office of the Director of Public Prosecution will cherry pick. When they are looking at changing my mind, they think it's problematic. They will not run to the penal code, they will run to the social media law to implicate it. And so we need to be aware of that. The third part that is problematic, I think, is because of lack of internal ethics. And so this is a problem with bloggers themselves, or media, that certain basics of professionalism have ceased to exist. And that is challenging. In Kenya now we have a term, Kenyans on Twitter. And sometimes we think that some of the people online are mercenaries for hire. Just like they were mercenaries in the 20th and 19th century with guns. Now you have people online who are hired to mess up the lives of others. But because they think online space offers a lot of anonymity, they go ahead to commit crime in the name of expression. You know, and that must be called out for what it is. If you incited people, that is not protected speech. So whether you are a blogger or not, that's another issue. You are a criminal and you will be held accountable to that extent. So we need to be able, I think the last panel was talking about digital literacy. There is a big moment for us to teach each other and reach out to each other that even though online space may offer you certain levels of safety, it's not a tool for crime. If you committed a crime as is well defined, then you will be held accountable. And Henry, who protects freedom of expression, will not readily come to you to protect you because you committed a crime.
Great. One last question before we open the floor. Dapo, I want to ask you about, speaking of hatred and incitement, now you have fake news, which has also seeped into, into traditional or mainstream media outlets. I mean, you have the examples of Kenya, the BBC, the CNN, being targeted and being free. How much of that is a problem, especially in the context of Nigeria, and how are you guys dealing with it, especially given the fact that the election is less than a year?
Okay. Well, I mean, Nigeria is not an exception. Indeed, the reality of Nigeria's population and size makes it like a very more troubling context for these. This is one of the very interesting outcomes of social media, right? Because it's provided, if you like, a democratizing atmosphere and resource to do good and to do ill, so that you find Nigerians, especially using the more high-speed resources like Twitter, I mean, they just spreading all sorts of crazy thoughts. I think, it's a problem for everybody. Very recently, the National Security Council here came out of this meeting, obviously frustrated, and said we really have to do something serious now about social media. We don't know what they want to do, but we know what things they've been doing in the past, and probably we know that security agencies are having very balloon budgets, and we are seeing footprints of surveillance instincts and resources being built. The government in this country has engaged expert resources from Israel to help monitor social media and opposition forces. We have no reason to believe that this is going to stop, especially now that there's presumably some sense of justification because of the terrorism or insurgency in the northeast, the more pervasive conflict that has just truncated the whole military for the country. So people in government really talk about the need to really regulate these kinds of institutions. It's a problem, but the bigger question that you are saying is what are people doing? First is legislation is trying to come up with a law against hate speech, and very obviously, even before the first letter of even the bill had been written, the author of the bill is saying that punishment should be by death. Then, with regards to fake news, it's all about, well, our attitude is a very simple one. You really have to solve the problem of hate speech with more education. You really have to provide context to debunk some of these claims. You must let ideas collide, create institutions and avenues that will allow the more tribal, more critical, more cerebral kinds of thoughts to knock those kinds of crazy ideas that's running around. Earlier this year, 8 newsrooms came together in this country, and they thought that we really need to do something about fake news in particular. And so we set what you might call a fact-checking site, dubawa.org, DUBWA, if you have time to check this. trying to have, it came as a result of 3 fears. One is the election of next year, knowing full well what has happened around the world. Second is also the general question of the conflict in the country, and which is really generating hatred among people. The government has now been too famous, the capacity to manage, difference in any elegant way. And lastly is just a question of, policy, the integrity of policy. Government officials stand, at every corner, and they just blatantly lie about, So, these newsrooms, they just want to do something about it. So that platform has been created. But much more than that is the fact that a whole lot of newsrooms are signing on to train the journalists to create fact-checking sections in the newsroom, and that's very important. But also that they themselves, can set up even government media institutions now. I think we are in an age where it's a little bit of an oxymoron. Journalism is supposed to be a whole discipline in facts and accuracy, but now we really have to engage in fact-checking of the kinds of things we do, and that's the age that we are in. So that's what's happening, and one will hope that this will also become correct. Of course, South Africa, as we have about 8 fact-checking institutions all over the continent. Kenya, we have the president, the Bible just set up the facts. So otherwise, what we have here, we'll see just how well it is.
Tolu, given what you know now, especially in the wake of the Cambridge Analytica scandal, are you guys doing anything with regards to fake news, or is there like a presidency government putting in a plan just a few months before the election?
So I can't speak for security agencies. I have no idea what they're doing. But I can speak for myself, for my office. And I know that, it's a matter of concern. Fake news, disinformation. But again, going back to what I said at the beginning, it's a sensitive issue for governments to be involved in. Because sometimes governments are also sources of disinformation themselves. So you can't expect that government will be disinformation with the government. Media themselves are big sources of disinformation. So because it's a sensitive issue, whatever is going to work has to be a partnership, a coalition of sorts, of all parties. So you have to be, and there's something along those lines, but it has to be something that pulls together government, media, judiciary, citizens, civil society, all of them, but everybody has to come together. Because fake news or disinformation ultimately affects all of us. So there's some thinking going into that. Nothing quite firmed up yet, but obviously it occurs to me, and speaking personally, that a lot of the work that needs to be done is also along the lines of education, digital literacy, letting people know. Also because for many people, especially for older people, I'm sure we all have dads and moms who are on Facebook here, on WhatsApp, and we forward everything that gets sent to them. And who believe and forward everything, almost as though, by seeing this thing on WhatsApp, it has to be. And so these are people who 10, 15 years ago, they had never been, the internet didn't exist for them. And all of a sudden, there's this world of PBS information and all that. But nobody has quite taught them how to ask the basic questions about the fact that someone has sent this to me does not mean it's true. So I think that a lot of the work that has to be done, and the safest, least controversial part of the work is in that education. in teaching people that when you get a video, pause and ask yourself a few questions. This video that claims to be from Borno State, you see that church in Borno State. Is there somewhere I can check? And then that's where the fact-checking sites come on. That's where Google image searches, for people need to be aware. So that for me, that's the lowest hanging fruit. That's the easiest thing to do. That doesn't feel controversial. And I've got some plans. Well, at least my office has got some plans along those lines. But as I said, we have to involve working with other players, with the social media platforms themselves, with media, with civil society, just to make sure that, again, just to make sure that, as I said at the beginning, the knife and the yam are not in anyone else's hands.
Great. Any questions? We'll now open the floor. 2 hands over there. 3. 4. Okay, we'll take yours as well. Could somebody get the microphone? Yeah, over there.
Thank you very much. Kudos to our panelists who actually done justice, to this topic. Well, mine is just a curiosity somehow that actually we can only limit fake news. We cannot eradicate it. As much as there is opposition of the government. Okay. We can only eradicate it. And actually, another thing I'm just looking at that, Africa, continent where the 1.2 billion actually, and we have the internet access, 21% internet access penetration, and government is fighting the citizen and press like this. What if we have 50% penetration of access, and a lot of things going on? What will government be doing to us? What will government be doing if you have 90% penetration of access? What will they be doing? But what I'm actually, advising the government is actually they should work in hands with the press. They should educate them. Actually, if a light is burning you in your head, actually you know how you feel. They know how they feel when they saw this information online. But what I am advising them is just to work in hand with the press and to educate them.
Thank you, distinguished panelists. I want to make a comment on what Maynard said. He gave us a list of countries that have criminalized defamation. I know I'll pardon him. I just want to add that he should add Nigeria to that list. Section 373 of the Criminal Code of Nigeria stipulates defamation. Defamation in Nigeria can be civil, it can also be criminal. And in the present, they tend to be a leaning towards criminalizing defamation. You publish something against the powers that be, and the next thing, they want it to be civil, like it happened recently. Publications were made against the military. The military asked for a retraction, it was refused, and in a bid to be civil, they employed the police to prosecute the person who published that particular article, and then the police swung into action and after looking at it and seeing that there was no need to proceed against the person criminally at the point they dropped it, I want to say that that person is just among the few lucky people. The usual thing is, even if we know we are not going to secure a conviction, less worry with litigation. By the time you are arrested, before your bail terms are perfected, you will have been somewhere you wouldn't want to be. So, aside from that, I also agree with Mr. Maynard concerning what he said. There's no need to reinvent the tools, the wheels. There's no need to reinvent the wheels. The laws are already in existence. If you look at what the Cyber Crime Act is seeking to do, the already existing laws before the advent of the Cyber Crime Act are taking care of that. Also, he made a point which I agree perfectly with. He said by the time you are re-legislating on existing laws, that you're giving the office of the public prosecutor an opportunity to pick. If it is so, I will go hard after him. If it is the other way, I will look towards the side where the law is less. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, my name is Alexander Otutu, and I work with the media house, and I would love to say certain things. The question is the media doing enough? How much can we do when we don't have enough information? Is the government really giving us enough information to do? Because sometimes the president is out of the country or we need certain information and we can't get them. And we owe the citizens this very service. That is why definitely the citizens can't go on the street when we get arrested or when NBC is coming after us. We continuously get love letters when we think we're going south. Now, most times, the government is very quick to term questioning hate speech. When you question, it becomes hate speech. Those questioning translates to irresponsibility. Because before now, I know you write about the government. What's up about now? And I want to ask you this. What do you mean by irresponsibility in the part of the media? So, thank you.
Thank you very much. My name is Femi. Two questions. The first one about fake news. I think 2017 is the year when the media globally came under the most attack by the man who popularized fake news, even when he was attacking real news. And so I think that even put confusion in people's mind. What exactly do we mean by fake news? So how do we define fake news? And like one of the panelists said, how do we create a simple system that and communicate it that people can use to assess every piece of information you get, to check the likelihood or if it's true or not before you share, which is usually default setting. The second question I have is around the dynamics of the ownership of media organizations. I think a few years ago, politicians in Nigeria caught on to the fact that rather than complain about the media, why don't you own a media outfit? And so the majority of the media outfits in Nigeria have one politician or the other who own them on both sides of the divide. And you know that the information that's coming out of these outlets lots of times have an agenda. How do we, there's some outlets that I don't listen, I will not trust anything that comes out of because of their precedents. How do we manage and are there legal frameworks for divorcing financial ownership of a press, a media agency from editorial output?
Thank you. I think I'm going to take those first and then raise a hand. Okay, let's just take it.
I have a question.
Huh?
I have a question.
Maybe you can just give me the microphone. Thanks.
My name is Timothy Baradeli. I appreciate all our panelists. However, I want to find out how easy it will be for government and the citizenry to have an handshake when already there is conflict. For instance, in Nigeria, we have Freedom of Information Day, and now we have law on cyber security. So our brother is talking about the need to have a reconciliation where all of us will be at the table and we agree on what we want to do. That hey, I have the knife, I have the yam, but we realize that there is a conflict on ground, and we have to situate this within the context of the society itself, where there is gross mutual suspicion, even on the part of the citizenry and the government. There are several others that agree with you. So within that context of mutual suspicion, and considering the level of lack of openness in our government, how easy will it be for us to come to a reconciliation point when already we're in conflict?
Thank you. I think there are questions about fake news, media ownership, legislation, and then one directly to Toto about the responsibility of the media. Who is this first?
I defer to
So the first question I think I would want to answer is the one asking me to clarify what I mean by media responsibility. I don't know how many people remember the day after the dark girls were abducted, and the newspapers, all of the newspapers, I think it was the day after, well, not all, most of the newspapers had headlines that said that the girls had been found. I believe they quoted the spokesperson of the Yobe State government, who had issued a statement. And the next day, for many of the papers, major papers, they all had it. And that's passed without incident. Almost like, oh yeah, they just made it, they were misled. And I found it incredibly shocking. Because for me, it was a sense of just how journalism has fallen in Nigeria, where, put all the blame on, government, of course, somebody in government misled them, and there's no doubt in that. But I thought that the whole point of media and journalism was that if a spokesperson tells you the girls are back, you've got your independent ways of finding out. Or at least in casting your story, you say something like, government says 95 girls are back or something. But no, it just felt like the most normal thing, like, oh, look, they made a mistake, and that's it, I'm moving on. And I don't think a lot of people, it just didn't dawn on anybody that this actually, going by the standards of what we should know as journalism, is sacrilege. Like, how do you make that kind of mistake? Essentially, you just, the people calls it the research journalism, where journalism becomes, it's no longer about what exactly is the fact. It's that this person said, so this senator said this person stole, the fellow senator stole 1 million. This one said this one stole 2 billion. And then it becomes he said, she said. And citizens are left going with he said, she said, and nobody is making any effort to say what are the facts of this matter. If you look at it, you will see that a lot of what passes for journalism today, and I've worked in the newsroom before, a lot of what passes for journalism today is that he said, she said. And people are left at risk, nobody knows what happened. So that's what I mean by the responsibility of media. And the fact that it almost feels like people don't even care. People can't be bothered. Oh, yeah. And, unfortunately, government doesn't even have that luxury. The government spokesperson comes out now and makes a mistake. He haunts you. But if a newspaper makes that kind of mistake, it just feels like, oh no. So I was going to share a quote here. This is from 1787 or something. I'm sure you may lot of us are familiar with, Thomas Jefferson. Were it left to me to decide whether we should have a government without newspapers or newspapers without a government, I should not hesitate a moment to prefer the latter. So in other words, newspaper, we take newspaper without a government over a government without newspapers. Which valid point? Who tells you how much power the media has and should continue to have? But with that power should come a certain level of responsibility. And so the question is, who is holding the media to account? I think we've decided here that government cannot do that. But who? It's a question worth asking. I mean, we know who is holding the government to account. We know media is doing that, we know civil society is doing that. Who is holding? When media doesn't get held to account, if you think of what Thomas Jefferson said, when he says, I will prefer a newspaper without a government, think of what happens when the newspaper or when the media is not held to account. When civil society organizations are not held to account, what we find is the kind of issues that we've seen, the massive corruption in HIV funds, HIV/AIDS funding and stuff like that. You know, so the question, it may feel like a side question, but with any power should come a certain responsibility. I think we're unanimous, it's a unanimous point here that governments need to be held to account. But I'm not sure it's a call to us that, especially in the age of digital media, that it's important to also have media organizations also held to account, not through censorship, not by government, but there must be some. It's a vacuum, it's a space that needs to be filled, and you don't have to be a government official actually to feel helpless in the hands of the media sometimes. I can imagine that there are people here who are, you don't work in government or anything, but you've been at the mercy of disinformation actively peddled in the media. And yet it feels like there's no consequences. So it feels like a devil's advocate type of thing, but I think it's something that is what better place to talk about it than like a panel that is about government and digital media. So I hope that just clears what I was saying about media responsibility and your responsibility. And then your second question had to do with how much information? Oh yeah, government. Oh yeah. So yeah, obviously, government is not. Government could do a lot more to make information available. But often, often the challenge, and I have faced that challenge. The challenge is that a lot of the time, even when you within government, it's as much of a struggle to get that information as outsiders. So sometimes you don't even have an advantage, especially when it involves what is like security information. Security agencies are not out there handing out information like party packs. They are holding it. You know what I mean? And it's always been like that. I believe we still have the Unofficial Secrets Act, which even though it's how many years old, I believe it's from the 60s. Which people will still hold on to. In fact, I saw an article a while back that said that sometimes even information that is publicly available in newspapers, if you put out an FOI request to a government agency, they will just come back to you default and say, no, this is confidential. So there's still a lot of the hangover of the years when there was no information available. But honestly, I must also say that I think that through some of the work that my office has done, I think we have put out more information than any other government in the recent history of Nigeria. Now, that's not to say it's enough. Obviously, people are, but I think that we have done, and my team has personally done a lot more than anybody I know, or than any time I've been aware of in government, in terms of putting out government information. So it makes sense then to say that, okay, we're not where we used to be, we're not where we would like to be, but I think it's also important to look on the positive side and say, okay, look, we're not where we used to be. So, for example, I've given this example a bunch of times. I said that the last government spent 5 years in power, and this was 5 years, and now, the 5 years are over now. There is not a single digital archive of any policies or anything by that government anywhere on the internet. There's nothing. It's a loss in two ways. It's a loss for that government, and it's a loss for the people of Nigeria. There wasn't even a functioning State House website. There were no official social media accounts. So this is the first time that we have functioning social media accounts for government. Now you may quibble about how much information is coming out that way, but I think we've got to acknowledge that I don't think we are where we used to be. And if my job ends today and I have to hand over, I'm looking forward to handing over a whole bunch of assets, social media accounts, a website that will contain some amount of government information that you can engage in.
Great. We have 4 minutes, so each of the speakers, I'm going to give you 2 minutes to respond to the question and also give you a final word.
No, I think I can give up my time.
No, I mean the other three speakers. Sorry.
Wow. I think to answer the question, is the media doing enough? No. I acknowledge that we're not doing enough. And I think you can't have this conversation without recognizing and agreeing that there is a credibility issue with the Nigerian media currently. It is a big credibility issue. While governments will always have credibility issues, the media of a country, their credibility issue should be much less, on a lower ranking if we were to rank it. So we have a massive credibility issue. Nigerians will look at news from what we might have considered primary sources in the older days, the more traditional mediums, and now you have to question them. You have to question what's coming out of them. You have to question who's putting it out. We no longer have the ability to trust them as easily as we used to, and we have to acknowledge that, and I think that's work that the media has to do. I'm always very iffy when people talk about regulation and self-censorship. I see what happens. When a media house gets a fine of 500,000 or 1 million, you don't need to ask them to censor themselves. They'll do it for you. And you don't really need to ask the OABs or the broadcasters to do it. Because a lot of the times, these fines are passed down to the media workers. And guess what? I'm not going to want to pay another fine. What do? I self-censor myself. So when we talk about regulation and all that, I'm always very, very iffy about it, because while the media has a credibility issue and we're not doing enough, when we start bringing in issues of censorship and let's not even talk about the Nigerian Guild of Editors. I wonder sometimes what they're doing. No disrespect to anybody. I have an editor, a fantastic one, but I question what their annual and sometimes biannual meetings are truly all about in the space of what's happening with the media in Nigeria. So we have a lot of work to do. We haven't done enough. There's a lot more to do. There are a lot more tools available for the media to use, and there's really no excuse for the state of what our media is. And if we can't address the credibility issue that the media has, it's going to become a bigger fight, especially in the space of fake news, especially as Nigeria goes to elections in 2019. We already see what's going on online. It's going to be crazy. Then someone talked about the issue of ownership. He's right. Politicians are going into the media massively, and they're doing very well to hide who owns what radio, newspaper, television station. There's no lie to that. I know a number of those ones coming online, and when you hear the people behind it, you're like, really? And there's not going to be legal framework, because the people who are going to help you create a legal framework are the ones who benefit from the ability to own media organizations. So let's not deceive ourselves. There's not going to be legal framework because they benefit from the ability to hide and maybe find themselves owning media organizations sometime in the future. So I think for me, it all comes back to education and literacy. The more educated our people are, the less likely they are to fall for fake news. The more they will insist on more credibility and factual reporting, the more they'll know what news mediums or organizations are actually primary and credible sources. We have to work as media to educate our people. If we don't, we fail them in the long run. I think that's basically what I can say for now, but the media has a lot more work to do, and that's pressure we put on ourselves, but that's work we need to do with government. And I'm glad Tolu could say that even him, sometimes, he can't get access to the information that is necessary. And I think citizens also need to realize that it's not going to be all information you think you have a right to, that you actually really have a right to, and that conversation also has to exist in this space as well.
I think the first thing is to reiterate. My colleague, the second colleague who spoke, I gave examples of Kenya, Ghana, and Lesotho, and Zimbabwe as the only 4 countries on the continent that have decriminalized defamation. So Nigeria is part of all the others that retain criminal defamation. So that, just to make that correct. In terms of, is the media doing enough? I think increasingly, the media, legacy media, TV, radio, print, are struggling to break news because online people are breaking news. And as a result, they are falling short of what would be standard codes of conduct that would be expected. The ABCDE of journalism requires that you are accurate, you are balanced, you are complete in your story, you are detached, you're fair, and all that would be equals to ethics. When you don't do those things, because sometimes because of the sensational nature of news today, you want to say the vice president said this or the deputy president, so that tomorrow you can say what the opposition has said. So the story is never complete today because you are keeping the other part for tomorrow. Or you're saying when we contacted the other party, they were not available to speak because you're preparing your headline for tomorrow. And that in itself shows the incompleteness that exists today. It shows that we're not doing enough per piece of story that we are following. For me, fake news is purely a process of deliberate manipulation of information to mislead. So it's not an honest mistake. You know, a journalist can make an honest mistake. You misquoted someone, you got their name wrong. That is not fake news. That is not disinformation. That is just a professional mistake. Fake news must be a deliberate process of disinformation with an ulterior motive, either to change the tide of thinking on a given issue or to mask it so that people don't get the required information. So if we've understood that that is the problem, then this is not just a problem with the media. As he said, governments have had propaganda departments since time immemorial, and that's what they've been doing. What governments have done is to criminalize anybody else who's threaded in propaganda, but legalize themselves to have such official departments. Now we are in a moment where governments are no longer the sole points for propaganda. That is what is causing Trump to feel annoyed, because he can't say, I'll be the sole power of propaganda. Other parties exist. But in that lies a solution. And I want to give Kenya as an example. During our 2013 elections, CNN carried a footage alleging that Kenyans were preparing to massacre each other. This was a footage that had been taken during the 2007 elections. I would tell you that through online engagement, the government of Kenya got to understand that it needed to ask CNN for interaction. But CNN Vice President had to come to Kenya to apologize. This is thanks to Kenyans on Twitter. So the very people that can perpetrate disinformation, they can help in correcting it instantaneously. And therein lies a solution to fake news. That if you are cheating, correct people can intervene and call you to account and shame you online immediately. So a community of genuine engagers online can begin to change the tide on those processes. And lastly, the question of media ownership. I think herein lies the problem of current regulators. There isn't transparency in frequency spectrum allocation in our countries. So nobody knows how many frequencies are available and who they've been allocated to. And if those people who are allocated to pay any money at all. So if we begin to unbundle the secrecy around broadcasting licenses, and increasingly the digital dividend, because with digital switchover, there is more frequency available. Then we will begin to deal with the ownership challenge, where politicians and their cronies are having a privilege, a new privilege in owning frequencies, when other genuine citizens who would have been interested in owning frequencies and offering a platform for diverse view are not allowed. But two, this has been done elsewhere, so don't give up. I think the Eastern European countries manage, they are the only countries in the world today that have media ownership transparency reports. So you go there, you know who exactly is the beneficial owner, not the one who was given a license, the beneficial owner of a media house. It's possible for us to get there, because if we need to change the tide, we must be willing to do the right thing.
Zafar, you have the last word.
Okay, I'm not sure just the level of point, because frankly, I'm just endorsing everything that you said, and that's really perfect. I'll add 2 points to what you said about fake news. Apart from the deliberate nature, the end goal to manipulate and deceive is also the twin issues of the sourcing. Information, really, you have to source information from one. And everything about fake news is that the sourcing is always dubious. The second part of it is the quality of verification. You will struggle in vain to be able to provide any rational verification for fake news. And that's what really makes it, a product of discredit. Rather than speaking in this direction, I mean, Tolu, with due respect, let me try to answer the question that you posed, like a dilemma about how the accountability of the media. This is a very interesting point. And in the digital environment, it is an added problematic issue. The media has always been really accountable. Now, when we say media, in a sense, it's a very loose term. We really have to talk, because everything from setting up a website to sell flowers, that's media, to set up a comedy shop which doesn't want to address anything substantive, that's media. To do a pornographic filmic project, that's media. So what I think we're really talking about is journalism. The end goal of which is public purpose. How to really help strengthen democracy, how to help build communities, how to strengthen relationships. That's, I think, how we are this role. Its accountability is not just that. First, the accountability is around its ethics. Any serious journalistic institution or platform understands that it has to be guided by professional ethics. I'm not going to come here and raise my hand to say that this is a norm in this country or in most of African countries. No. But that is the second is that, of course, the whole legal regime, the whole treaty regime around which journalism has had to emerge from, that the whole global environment has signed into, that's the framework of its accountability. I've been in and out of courts, it's for one thing or the other. The gentleman who spoke earlier about defamation, we had written a story about the head of our military not declaring his assets, or rather having resources which appear not to be reflected in his assets, and we got upset about that. My job is to bring him to account to Nigerians, and that we did. He's not responding in the language of accountability, so he reaches for the army, reaches for the court, so they arrest you. But that's not the problem, Because if you want to do true professional journalism, those danger zones is not any different from the guy who's on the rig. The drain, the petrol that we all use, the pipes will burst tomorrow, the health worker, the nurse, the doctor who is doing a surgery, doesn't know whether he's going to contact some kind of disease. So these are risk zones, and we shouldn't make too much of that. The accountability of the professional is around his ethics, and is also, around the whole instruments that we all come to assess, from treaty to statutes and in case law. So it's very clear. It's very, very clear. Thank you.
Thank you, Jaco, and thank you, Tolu, Leslie, and Tolu Adilero, and Henry Maina. Please, a round of applause for the
So I'm wearing my host's hat back. Please, another round of applause for the panelists. This is how we wrap up today's session. We will be starting at 9 a.m. tomorrow with a tea break, and we'll really try to stick to time. So please